have I ruined it all? Like, is it already too late? But it's never too
No,
late, you know, it's never too late.
no. I think if you want to see the change, you've got to be the change. And
Mhm.
that's, I think, the hardest thing I think, parents to actually comprehend.
Hi, my name is Becky Jennings, and this is the Response Able Parenting Podcast. I give you the transformational tools to stop reacting to your children in the moment and start responding with intention.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Response Able Parenting Podcast. This is your host, Becky Jennings, and I am so excited because I'm doing my very first interview. And even though it took us 28 minutes to get on and all the tech stuff that did not work, mainly on my part, we are here. So I'm happy to introduce you to Reece Anderson. He is the founder of We Overcome Anything. And through his own battles of mental health and working in this sector, he has realized the disconnect between teenagers and parents, which I think everybody wants to learn more about. So Reece works with both to help build connection, curiosity, and respect for both themselves and each other. So welcome, Reece. Thank you for being here and
Thanks
for
for having me. We got there eventually.
eventually. Oh my God. All right. So let's dive in.
Perseverance.
Yeah, exactly. We can't overcome anything. Oh my God, we just did it in real time. We
We did
actually,
it. We did it. See, it's a thing.
exactly. It's real. It happened. And you coached me through it. Um,
I don't know if I did that.
you were just like, make it happen, Becky. So tell me a little bit about you, where you're located, what you've been doing, and we'll dive in.
Yeah. So I am located in Australia, um, in Brisbane, or Sunny Coast now. Originally from New Zealand though, so I've been in Australia 17 years. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and then I have a 17-year-old. Um, so two opposites ends of the spectrum. I I've been working in mental health the past 5 or 6 years, and like you said before, I was just saw this real I've just seen this real disconnect. I mean, I feel the system fails a lot of people over here. I'm sure it might be the same over there. And yeah, so I sort of where Become Anything originally was kind of, oh, let's help anyone. And then as I've evolved, I guess, and things that I've seen is like, yeah, I've just started to really work more with the teens and the parents. And I also work in schools running programs for a non-for-profit organization too. So which is pretty cool because I get to hang out with young dudes every day and talk all sorts of stuff and show them hopefully a different way of living. So everything I kind of do is falls under the same umbrella, and that same purpose of trying to work with both sides to, because yeah, it's easy to point the finger. I think was what found easy to point the finger at the young person or the dad or the even I do chuck teachers in there or the mums. And for me, it's gone. Yeah, look, people can start to be more aware of themselves, and then you can bring that probably connection a little bit closer once they understand themselves better. So that's kind of the basis of what I work under.
Yeah, I hear that. Like, it's so easy to say that the child is causing the reactivity within you. It's their fault. They're annoying. They're doing this. They're asking too many questions. They don't
Mm.
see that I have needs too. And so we can become very reactive versus going, okay, this triggers me. It's clearly a mirror, right? It's clearly a mirror into something I need to work on within myself. So that's really fascinating. What do you find is the most common breakdown between parents and teenagers? Like, where is that main disconnect?
Ooh. Probably a few things. There's like I think first thing is like it's kind of a power imbalance. It's kind of like, well, I'm the parent, so I know, so you need to listen to me, and that's that.
Mm,
And then I guess on the back of that means that we're not being curious and actually understanding maybe why that person's acting how they're acting, or why you're, like you said, why actually maybe you're being triggered by it.
mm.
And then I think the other part is just everyone's uses time, and they say they're too busy to actually sit down and have their real conversations.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's easier to keep doing the same thing and on repeat than it is to learn a new behavior, apply that skill, and actually practice it on a regular basis. Yeah,
I
that's
think it's the whole, it's easy to do the easy but hard to do the hard, right? And the hard will usually get you the benefit, but it just takes longer to, because you've got to be consistent. And for a lot of people, that's it's too much for them.
Yeah. Yeah. When I'm working with parents, like right now, it seems to be like my sweet spot is like 9 and under for some reason. Like that just seems, maybe that's because my kids are young. But people are coming to me at that relative age. And I generally advise people to get curious with play, right? So like how you can resolve a lot of pitfalls is how can you wrap a situation up in play? How do you advise teenage parents? Because you're not going to be like, hey, let's slither like a snake to go brush our teeth. They're going to be like, cool,
Yeah.
mom. So how do you teach parents to because it is like play is super uncomfortable. Like a lot of us don't want to do it. A lot of us don't have time to think of scenarios, but it's also the same with adult or like teenage kids. Like how are you wrapping scenarios up in a more curious way for them to actually gain cooperation and talk to them?
Well, I think the biggest one is do what they like doing.
Yeah.
So if they're sitting on video game, but you're sitting there going, oh, bloody video game, that's not, okay, sit there with them and get them, you probably build a connection there because they'll get excited talking about it. I mean, it might be like, oh, okay, this is boring, but it's what they're fascinated about. Sit there, and often you see like, we're going to go do this, and they're like, well, I don't want to do that.
Right.
Again, what does the young person like doing? And therefore, if they like doing something, and you're sitting there with them, just giving them 10, 15, 20 minutes of your time actually being interested in what they're doing, it can go a freaking long way.
Yeah.
And you actually might hear your young person for the first time because they might actually, because you're doing something and it doesn't feel like it's some formal chat, they might say things that you haven't heard before, and you actually might be present for the first time to listen to them. So for me, I think, I see a lot of parents, it's like, well, we're going to go do this because I want to do it. Well, what do they want to do? What are they interested in? Go and role model that same behavior, but get in there and be curious about what they're doing. Who cares if you don't like doing it? If you really want to build that connection, then put your ego aside and go in and give them that 10, 15, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. And I think for me, that's how you incorporate play, because then from there, other things can evolve. Because then they might want to come and do the stuff that you're doing because you're a role model, you're caring about what they do.
Yeah, I certainly don't like sitting on the floor playing school for 20 minutes while my son yells at me and tells me what to do as he's pretending to be a teacher, but we do it, right? We do it. Anyways.
Yeah, but I think, we do it with those younger ages, and it's kind of like, I think when they get to a certain age as a teenager, it's kind of like we check out, we think, oh, well, we've done our job. When that's when they probably need us the most. They'll tell you they don't need us the most, but they probably need us the most.
Yeah.
And absolutely. I think we forget that, and we start to, and then as a young person, again, it's confusing because I think they get treated like an adult, but then they get treated like a kid, and it's whatever the parent's feeling and dictating rather than having some consistency. And it's important, consistency, healthy boundaries, and us actually caring.
Yeah. Tell me more about that, like what you've seen within the teenagers, like the teenagers saying that this doesn't serve them well, like some actions that the parents do. Like, you were talking about the inconsistency of sometimes they treat them like a kid, sometimes they treat them like an adult. Like, is there a through line of like, I would like to be treated like this, like that kind of you see repeating often with teenagers?
Well, it's when I'm in schools, I always ask the boys, I said, what is usually your biggest frustration with either teachers or parents? And most of them will say, I don't feel heard.
Wow.
I don't feel heard. And I'll say 99% of boys that I've worked with put their hand up, and most teens you talk to go, I don't feel heard. And that's huge.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not feeling heard now, what stories are they creating to take into their adulthood that then they don't get to have a voice ever?
Right.
And we're setting them up for failure because then we're saying that you don't matter. You don't have to agree with what comes out of their mouth. But if, I think it's very easy to sit there and look at the behavior, label the behavior, label their whatever they're doing versus, okay, let's get curious, let's better understand, let's try and have a conversation and see past that and ask them questions going, what's going on for you today? And they might give you the nothing, but at least you've asked the question.
Yeah.
You don't follow that up with having a go at them either. So for me, it's I don't know, it's just treating them how you want to be treated yourself. And I think you touched on something before, about it's easy. It's if we're triggered by their response, where's that come from? And 9 times out of 10, I think I saw this clip just this morning actually, and it was a lady saying one of the biggest things she sees that parents don't realize is a lot of their triggers probably come from someone in their past.
Yeah.
And that past is usually probably a carer, a parent, a grandparent, whoever has brought them up. And we don't necessarily connect to that all the time. Or we don't want to.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, I just want to forget that. But it's impacting this new relationship you're trying to build here. And
yeah,
I think it all sounds so easy, but it's not when you have, but it's not when you haven't done it. And I think, and I say this to everyone, like, I run an 8-week parent program, and parents come in thinking they're just going to get all these awesome tips for their teen. What they don't realize is that the first half of it is looking at themselves. And it's confronting, so confronting. But the ones that actually looked within and did the work, you could tell by the end that they had a different environment at home, because they started to realize it's actually not my young person, it's me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we have this lens from our past experiences and our, upbringing and how we were parented and social situations. And we're viewing everything through that. And it's like that confirmation bias, right? It's like, he doesn't listen to me. And then you're spending all day looking for the evidence that your son's not listening to you. And then you're like, see, he doesn't listen to me, versus like the 15 other times he did actually listen. You just zone out of your head because you're not looking through that right lens.
Yeah, I remember I was working with this 14-year-old last year, and I said, if your mom was here right now, what would she say about you? And she just goes, oh, lazy, unmotivated, and useless. And I'm like, okay. And I said, why is that? She goes, well, that's what she calls me every day. So, right.
That's an empowering belief system to impart.
So she couldn't, it took weeks, months to get past that, because her mum didn't really think that, but that's what came out of her mum's mouth when she wasn't doing what she was told. So therefore, that became her belief system.
Yeah.
There was nothing empowering. So what did she do? She exactly acted that, because that's all she thought she had to be. And she was so much more than that, but nobody was lifting her out of that state, because mum was totally disconnected from what she was saying. She didn't understand the impact, and she was too scared to tell her mum that she wasn't okay with that. So, and that's what it comes down to, because I think teens will go to say to their peers, their parents, or whatever, are shit or crappy or not good, but they won't always come to their parents and tell them that, because can be an unhealthy attachment, because it's like, if I say that, then I might upset my mum or upset my dad or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but if you don't tell them, then they can't change or adapt. And if they don't change or adapt, that's on them, not on you.
Right.
And that's, again, back to that having a voice, right?
Yeah.
And so many of them don't.
Yeah. And it's like, all we want is to be seen, heard, and understood and loved, right? For exactly who we are. And it's that, when we're acting out or when we're responding in a certain way, like, it's so hard to remember as a parent that all behavior is goal directed, right? Every behavior is trying to meet a need. And yet we see it as disrespect, or we see it as they're acting out and they're out of control. But when we actually, like you're saying, just get curious and start trying to ask questions. And of course, the first couple times, maybe 100 times, you're going to get met with what are you doing now? This isn't the same dynamic, you don't ask me questions. So this is confusing, but, letting them know that you are there, right? You're there and I think maybe the hardest part is if that's been a routine or pattern or belief system, that your child is lazy, that your child is disrespectful, peeling back that filter that you're viewing them through, and starting a conversation with them saying, things are going to be different. I'm going to start acting different. It might feel different because it is different, but I'm going to show up differently now. It's not too late. I still want a relationship with you. I even feel like there's sometimes when I'm like, my child just turned 6 and I'm like, have I ruined it all? Like, is it already too late? But it's never too
No,
late, it's never too late.
no. I think if you want to see the change, you've got to be the change. And
Mhm.
that's, I think, the hardest thing I think parents to actually comprehend
Yeah.
is that. And I got this story. I had this client last year, and we are just doing a session, and this was a mum, and then she pulled her phone out of her bag, and her daughter had rung her like 32 times in 30 minutes, right? And she was at her dad's. They weren't together. And I was like, "Oh, is that a normal thing?" And she goes, "Oh, yeah, usually around this time of the night, she'll ring me all these times, and then she
Mm.
tell me she can't get to sleep, so I'll be on the phone with her all night." And I says, "Oh, okay." And I said, "Oh, do you want to call her?" And she goes, "What? Call her now. I just want to hear what you do. Just call her. What, right here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, call her." So she calls her up. I was just sitting there going, "Oh my God." So she just dismissed her daughter for 5 minutes, pretty much. It was just like her levels of like angst and stuff, and just wasn't listening to her. Could hear the daughter like in tears. Anyway, they go off the phone and she goes, "Oh, did you hear all that?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I definitely heard all that." She goes, "Was it good?" And I said, "No, it was terrible." And I said, "I want you to call her back." And she goes, "What?" "Call her back, put her on speaker, and I'm going to type some stuff on my phone, and you just read, just whatever I put on here, you read out." And I said, "We're gonna." And she goes, "Oh, I'm usually on the phone for hours with her, blah blah blah." And I said, "We will have this conversation done under 5 minutes." And she goes, "What?" I said, "Just follow my lead." Gets back on the phone. "Hey Dan, how you going?" All I did was write questions. I just said, "How are you feeling? Da da da. What's going on for you?" And then the girl was like, "Oh, no, Dad annoyed me. Da 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 da. I can't sleep." And then I just said, "Okay, what do you need? Oh, what would you like to do tomorrow when I pick you up from school? What will So give yourself something to look forward to." And she's like, "Oh, I don't know." And then I was like, be silent, say nothing." And then she's like, "Oh, can we just get the dog, go for a walk on the beach, and get an ice cream?" Mum's like, "Yeah, that's cool. Right, what do you need from me right now to help you get to sleep?" And she goes, "Oh, this has been great. I'm gonna just get my little beer and I'm gonna go to sleep."
I
Four
love
minutes,
that.
20 seconds. 4 minutes, 20 seconds. Mum gets off the phone and goes, "Oh, she was real calm." And I said, "Yeah, because you're calm. Because you didn't make it about you made it about her." So you asked her questions. When the previous conversations you had, she was going, "Just use all those strategies that we've done." And when I actually asked her about the strategies, they didn't come from the daughter, they came from mum. So the daughter had no buy-in with these strategies, whatever they were. And I said, "If you want to build some strategies, go home and tomorrow and ask her what would she like to use." Because what you just did then was you asked questions, you got curious, and she was heard for you for the first time. And I guarantee from now on in, you won't have 34 conversations. Anyway, never had 34 million conversations. Maybe one conversation less than 5 minutes if she needed to call her because mum wasn't making it about her.
Mm. Wow, that resonates so much because I do feel like often as parents, it very quickly becomes about us, right? So like the actions towards us becomes about how we're insulted, how we're put off, how we're annoyed, and that's where we respond from. But that's, I mean, it's a fascinating reframe to just be like, it's not about us. Like it's, if we want to give our children the tools to become healthy integrated adults, it's not about us, right? Well, I mean, the work is about us, but those questions and showing up, it's putting ourselves and our ego to the side. and
Mm,
and kind of like I talk about how when I speak to my kids, I speak from below them, right? I get below them so that I'm not lording over top of them. But even as a teen, it's like you're eye to eye now, right? It's like, this is us doing this together. It's kind of
yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a different way to look at it and go, well, this, when they're triggering off sometimes, it's not always about you.
Yeah.
There's probably 25 other million things going on in their mind that they don't even understand.
Yes.
So if we're never giving them a space to feel heard, understood, they'll never organically find those spaces as they get older. They'll just end up finding the similar people who probably trigger them off, vice versa, rather than actually go, okay. And we've got to role model that.
Yeah.
Like even like, I'm not perfect. I lose my shit sometimes, and like, we're human, right? Because you have your own stuff going on. But I try and role model that if I'm feeling a bit agitated by a thing, I go to timeout.
Mm-hmm.
So I remove myself and go, okay, I need to go 5 minutes of breathing, and just then I come back more regulated. Then I can have a different conversation.
Yeah.
Often, if we're going, they go, and then you lose it, and then you have 2 or 3 days where it's just crappy, right? Because it's just tense and nobody wants to apologize and take the lead. So
Yeah.
I think it's just about the more we can look at ourselves and how we're showing up. Like, don't look at the teen or whatever, how we're showing up, what's triggering us, becoming more self-aware. That'll in itself will help you see things very differently.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if you never show the process of going through an entire emotion, like experiencing rage, and if you're just like, no, I'm fine, then they're going, but I experience rage as well. So is something wrong with me because I feel it, But if you're like, I'm feeling so angry, and you're like audibly saying, okay, I'm so angry, I'm going to go take a walk around the block, and then I'm going to come back and speak to you in a better tone because I want I want to focus on connection. It's just, I like to bring my kids into my dysregulation, not make them dysregulated, but give them like a bird's eye view into how I manage it. So if I'm in the middle of, like, I can see myself going offline and I know I'm going to say something, or I have already said something, I'll either sit down on the floor and I'll put my hand on my heart and stomach and go, guys, I just need to breathe for a second because mommy is so angry right now that I need to calm down before I say the next thing, before I make my next choice. Like, I can't make a proper choice in this state, so I'm going to calm down. And my little one will just look at me and be like, are you done breathing yet? Are you done? Can we get back to playing? Because this is taking a long time. But yeah, if
Come
we
on,
don't,
mum.
right. But if we don't model that, they're going to feel like what they're feeling is not true and incorrect. And they're going to, bottle it up because that's what we do, right? That's what we show them.
Yeah, 100%. And the more you can role model things like that, they see, regardless of their age, they see, they hear.
Yeah.
They're going to do what you do. So, I always say to people, regardless of the upbringing and whatever you've had, someone's got to be the generational change in your family to do things differently. Like, we live in a different world. Like, you can focus on technology in a negative way. We can focus on, well, you can't ban it because it's the way of the world. But it's, again, I think it'll just putting boundaries, healthy boundaries in place. And that's for yourself, for them, for your family unit, whatever it might be. But people struggle with the boundaries because it's like, well, I want to be their best friend. I want to be there. I don't want to hurt them. We're actually doing more hurt by not setting healthy boundaries, because then they're probably more likely to go make stupider decisions as they get older, because no one's showing them that, hey, you get to look after you. You can say no to that person. Even simple things like apologizing. I mean, there was some boys were sharing the other day that they've never heard their parents apologize ever.
Wow.
And that's quite a common thing that I hear. Saying sorry. Like, it's like, again, ego thing. I'm the parent, I can't go say sorry. Well, you can, because then you're role modeling that it's okay that you've stuffed up. I do it all the time. I just have to go.
That's actually my favorite part, because now I'm like, oh, I messed up, but I can get in there and repair it by just making a meaningful apology.
But then it's obviously the timing. You don't do it straight away. You need to, because you want to make sure it is meaningful, right? And I know, I just hug it. I say my bit and we hug it out and we move on, because it's okay. Like, we're human too. Just because we're older doesn't mean that we know everything and that we have all the answers. So, and in my last program that I was running, on the very last night, I get the parents to bring their teens in, and they've got to do a letter to them. They have to read a letter to the young person, and that's when you can really tell the ones that have been putting the effort in, because you can come to the session. It's what you do in between the days, right? So, and just the emotion, and even these young people, you can see. And one of this young guys goes, yeah, I can see my mum and stepdad have really changed, and I've changed
Mhm.
because it's come from the top.
Yeah.
And it's like being in an organization, right? If there's no change at the top, nothing changes down the bottom, and it's the same thing. Like, but these letters were just like the most. Oh, it just blew me away because you saw connection, you saw curiosity, and you saw a families actually coming back together and knowing it's okay to be vulnerable. Obviously, they're showing up with courage to actually do this letter because it's not easy doing anything like that. And you saw positive change. And as I say to people, that doesn't mean it's going to be roses every day. It just means you've got something to now work off and come back to.
Yeah.
If things are getting a bit distorted, hey, let's look at me, you look at you, and then we can all talk about it. And that's where you want to get to.
Oh, I think that's just like you brought up 3 points that I want to make sure we touch on, but like everyone's going to make mistakes. Everyone's going to get distorted. Things are going to get you're going to be triggered. People are going to make mistakes. Just by doing this work doesn't mean everything's going to be, like you said, sunshine and roses. However, doing this work gives you the ability to elicit a pause, right? Puts more time between what was done to the way you react. And that pause alone gives parents in my perspective and opinion, enough time to be kind of run the checklist. Like, am I safe or is this a threat? Is this past or is this current? Like, is this mine or is this theirs? And kind of gives us a chance to recalibrate before we make that response. I wanted to ask you 2 questions.
Yeah.
Talking to teenagers, like how, no, but realistically, like what are some of the best curiosity questions parents could start asking this week to their teens to start opening that conversation? And then my next question after we do that would be, so say the house has been boundaryless and the kids have been kind of just parenting themselves. What does it look like and how do you start to create those boundaries so that everyone feels like it's a workable system versus I'm just now creating all these boundaries and you have to live like this?
Right. So the curiosity questions. Well, I think, how's your day? What's going on? They're just standard questions, right? So I'm all about just change it up. Like just things like what made you smile today? Like actually throw a question they actually have to think about. What was something challenging that happened today? What was hard about your day? Like actually ask some questions that you wouldn't usually ask. At the dinner table is a good chance to do it because if you mum and dad and whoever can start to role model that and share some of their hard stuff or their good stuff for the day, then that's going to open up the rest of the crew, right? So, and sometimes, and it's about picking your moment. Like if you see them walking through the door and they're a little bit off, you're probably not going to throw, "Oh, what made you smile today?" Right?
Yeah.
But it's about reading the room. But I think dinner table is a really good place to start that. Just asking some different questions and instead of, "Oh, how's your day?" It's just, and then what does the parents do? Oh, they just go, they just give me a grunt. Yeah, we'll change it up. And you might not get much initially, but think outside the box and but here's the thing. Ask these questions of yourself first. Like get more curious about you. Because then when you have a bit more of a deeper meaning of you, it's a lot easier then to ask those questions. And if you do get denied, you don't take it personally. Because that sometimes these things are a bit hard, right? So yeah, I think just being curious. And then, as I said before, be curious in what they're doing. Even if you don't like it. Hey, what game are you playing on your thing at the moment? Because 9 times out of 10, if you start actually asking them questions about stuff they love, even if you don't, people love talking about stuff they enjoy. So that's a really good basis to start from, right? Because if you keep asking questions about it, and initially they might be like, why are you asking me? You never asked me. But if you're asking it consistently, they're like, oh, okay, mum or dad actually cares.
Yeah.
They're actually taking interest in what I do. So yeah, that would be my tips there. And what was your other question? It was
how do you set the foundation of a healthy boundary where it just doesn't seem like we're just imparting all these new rules and this is now the way that the house is going to be run, right? But it like feels good for everybody.
Well, I think again, as the parent, I think you've got to put some boundaries for yourself. So if you're not used to having boundaries for yourself, so what that might mean is that, you know what, most parents find it really hard to even go, I'm taking 20 minutes for myself right now. You guys need to leave me. I'm going to have a cup of tea or read my book or whatever. Putting those in place first, that it's not all about the kid, because I feel so many parents go that way too much that it's almost unhealthy. That you've got to have that time for you, whether it's in the morning or in the day, whatever. Creating that boundary for you, and role modeling no and following through on it. So it's real easy to go no, and then they keep coming at you, and then you give in because it's like, oh, I can't be bothered. And that's where I think unhealthy boundaries start, right? And a boundary is not a straight line. Like I think there's this awesome someone sent me ages ago, and it's just kind of it has all these lines everywhere that set the boundary, have to reset the boundary, set the boundary, reset the boundary. Like it's not a, it's take we spoke earlier about doing the hard. This is doing the hard, but after a while, like anything, when you put a habit in place and you're consistent with something, everyone starts to see what's going on. And even during my 8-week program, I get families to sit down together and work out some things that they need to be more consistent in. It could be as simple as we're eating at the table at least 4 nights a week for dinner. Like, starting off as some group things. So then it's kind of like everyone's involved, having a family meeting, right? Where you might get your young people to share their frustrations and challenges, and then you have to shut up and say nothing, and then you can share your frustrations and challenges, and from there you work out how you can best navigate that, because then everyone's feeling heard, everyone gets a voice, and then you can work out some stuff together. Because sometimes if you've had zero boundaries or the boundaries have been all over the place, you can't just start going, right, you're not doing that, and then start being Mr. Hard Taskmaster, because you're probably just going to push them away even more. It's about doing it in a way that's healthy, beneficial to all, and everyone gets to feel heard too. So, and then it's coming back to some of the boundaries you might have to set is because we're trying to keep them safe, right?
Yeah.
It's not because you're trying to be a helicopter parent, or for some people they might be, but that's probably not healthy either, right? So we want your young person to be able to be themselves, become the person they want to be, not the person that we want them to be. Because I think we can fall into that trap, and that's where I think sometimes people can over boundary, because we're like, you can't do that, you can't wear that, you can't do this, and then what we're doing is we're telling them that it's not okay to be themselves.
Right.
And if there's parts of them that frustrate you, then that's more about you than it is about them. So.
Yes, that unconditional acceptance of the child that you have. This is your child, right? So you can either resist that is your child for the rest of that time that you have that relationship with your child, or you can lean in to that unique child that you have. And it made me think when you were saying that, like the sitting around having the family meeting where everyone gets heard, that might be the first time the teenager feels heard for the first time, in the family. And also like what we do in our household is we set the boundaries around shared values, right? So we value safety, we value listening, we value cooperation. So like there's going to be boundaries in the household where we're just like, that doesn't actually fall into the family value of cooperation. So that's why we're not doing that, so it simplifies. Even for my 5 and 3-year-old, like we have a little values list in their bedroom, and they're like, if they do something, they'll be like, okay, and they'll point to it, that crossed the boundary of safety. Like, yeah, when you launch yourself out of the top bunk, that crosses the boundary of safety, so.
Yeah, and that's what we do in the program, is that they sit down and they discuss values, because often values is a big one, because what you might value and then what your partner might value versus what your kids value could be very, very different.
Yeah.
Like, and I get them to do a little bit of a survey online test, and that sort of tells them their values, and then they're going to go present that to their family, and then from that they can try and come up with some family values. Because like you said, it's good to have that understanding, I think, because if you value trust, but maybe your young person doesn't value that because they lost it when they were young and that's down the bottom, then you're always going to be butting heads.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, again, back to be that curiosity, understanding each other and not making the other person wrong. I think that's another big one too, right?
Yeah.
It's just going, well, they're them. Yep. I need to put boundaries in place, like say for safety, protection, because I am the parent. I need to be the parent too. But we also need to make sure the other person's heard, especially as they get older. Because like I said, when we're not feeling heard, they'll take that into their adulthood. As the amount of people I've worked with, parents that have gone, yeah, I was just told to shut up as a young person.
Yeah.
And they're a
Voice
really
doesn't
big
matter.
and they're a big personality. And then I'm like, yeah, but you're allowed to do that. Yeah, but my dad said I can't. And they've carried that so they've probably met the wrong people.
Mm-hmm.
They've become withdrawn, disconnected, workplaces, relationships. It has an impact everywhere. And then you see them find their voice, and it's funny but scary. But then there's the people in their life are a bit scared because it's like, oh my God, they've found their power.
Yeah.
And then, I've seen partners go, oh, are you going to stay with me? Like, to the other person, because they're like, oh my God, now they've got confidence and stuff because people have squashed it out of them.
Yeah.
So if you're a parent who hasn't dealt with any of your stuff, you're just projecting, you won't even know it, but you're projecting all of that onto your young person.
Absolutely. Speaking of scary, for the people who are entering into having teenagers, what is something that you can tell them that makes it a little less scary? Like, tell us a story about how cool teenagers actually are, or like the fun stuff teenagers have shared with you, and the hope that you have for the next generation.
I just think we need to get out of the way of, they don't want to hear your stories of back in my day or what it was like. We're in a very different era to what any of us were. And I think they are unique, they're powerful, and there's so much to them. Like there was this boy the other day, was at one of the schools I was at, and we first met him last term, and he must be 15 or 14 or something, and quiet as a mouse, like just nothing came out of his mouth. And then just this past few weeks, it's just all this stuff's come out, and he's sharing about, he's even going home and sharing about what we do and the stuff he's learning. And the teacher pulled me aside afterwards and goes, mate, I've been working with that guy for a year and I get nothing out of him. What you guys have got out of him in 10 weeks is amazing. So my point in that is going, we get curious, we create a space that's safe and they feel heard, respected, and never shut down. And I actually asked him the other day, I said, what's different in here? And he goes, you guys care.
You can feel
I can
that.
See you care.
Yeah.
And you guys are real. Like, obviously we share quite a bit of our own journeys in these sessions, and we're pretty open and we're vulnerable. And we're, sometimes teachers and parents are seen in a very different light because whatever BS they're carrying around, I need to be this thing. But yeah, when you start to just get on their level and just connect with them, they, like over here at the moment, there's all this stuff around, youth crime and all this stuff. Youth are useless, youth are crappy. And it's like, well, not all youth are.
Mm-hmm.
There's a minority doing that, but the majority actually want to be the best person they can be. The majority want to come out and think, and yeah, I get to see it every day in their schools because these guys and they just want to feel like they're part of something. And yeah, it's not scary to have to maybe go and get to know your person again. I don't think it's scary. It can be, it'll probably feel weird.
Yeah, kind of like a first date again. Like
yeah,
it feels weird, it's awkward,
but yeah,
but you're getting to know them again.
But yeah, like reintroduce yourselves.
Yeah.
Like try and clean slate, but it doesn't have to be scary. But yeah, but I think that story sticks out, especially when teachers go, oh wow, I've never got through to that kid. It's like, well, what are you doing or not doing to do that?
Yeah.
And usually it's because they're carrying their own label of that child and of how they're showing up, rather than going, like usually I can meet a kid and I'll know pretty quickly within 2 or 3 minutes. I'm like, okay, that guy's got a lot of stuff going on at home. He won't even say anything about that, but I can just go, oh, there's some heavy stuff in his life. And then I'll say to the teacher and he's like, yep, 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 yep. And you just know, because when you're in tune with yourself, it's very easy to be in tune with other people.
Yeah.
And that way, when you're coming from that angle, so yeah, I think, and my probably other big advice on that is just come in with kindness and compassion.
Yeah.
Stop being an overpowering, dominating knob, to be honest. Just
Well, it works in the short term, but it
yeah,
doesn't. I mean, it will modify the behavior in the very, very short term. But when they're big enough, they can just say no to that. And unless there's a foundation of connection underneath, then that's that, and then you're just in this power struggle and resisting against each other the whole time. Yeah. It's also
because
like, yeah, go ahead.
no, because I don't know what it's like over there, but over here, like suicide's our leading killer for young people over here. Like it's our number one killer. We're losing, I think it's 9 people a day, 6 of those are men.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's just, it's in Australia, New Zealand's not too far behind. So it's that's why the work that we do is, I feel, is important, because why these kids feeling so low and disconnected, and what's going on at home, what's going on at school, and we play pivotal parts.
Yeah.
And if we're not willing to go in and do some work on ourselves and role model what that can look like, then what hope has our young people got?
Yeah. Yeah. And if you think about it, like as our children are developing, it can be very scary, right? Going from, my kid's 6, and I can't even imagine in 10 years what 16 looks like. But I also would be horrified if I was the exact same person that I am today, 10 years from now, so like just kind of reframing it. Like I always hope to be growing and becoming, like finding new things to excite me. If I'm just doing the exact same stuff I'm doing here at 40 than I do at 50, I'll be like, well, that was a lot of wasted time. So it's like, if you just kind of reframe and like, yeah, our children are going to be growing, new interests, new discoveries, like same with us, so just seeing them that they have an equal value in the household, in your life. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. It's equal playing field, and and you're okay to stuff up.
Yeah.
Admit your stuff up, say sorry, and actually, go out on dates, create a date, but not a date that just you want to do, they want to do.
Right.
Like they do want you, they do want to be connected to you. You need to show them how, because they're still developing. Most I think girls don't stop developing until 24, boys are 27. So
yeah,
teenage years are only really a third of the two-thirds of the way there. So we need to be, we need to bear that stuff in mind.
Absolutely. Reece, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm sure it's going to be very helpful to so many parents. Where can people find you? How can they get in? Is your class virtual? Is it just in Australia?
No. So it's online. My class is online. So my next one actually kicks off on the 29th of May. So it's a Monday night Australian time. You can connect with me on Instagram, which is we overcome anything _Australia, and and on Facebook I have a community, we overcome anything, that you can actually join. I just put I jump in there and do some lives and just free content and stuff in there. And then if people want to email me, reece@reeceanderson.com.au.
Wonderful. And I'll put that all in the show notes as well for everybody. But thank you so much. I very much appreciate you waking up early on your side of the world and dealing with all the tech issues.
It's all part of it, isn't it?
Right. Well, thank you very much. And everyone, thank you for joining us on another episode. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Response Able Parenting Podcast. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. If you know someone who would benefit from this podcast, I'd be honored if you'd share the episode with them. Until next time, know that you are enough. You are capable. You've made it through all of your hardest days, and we will keep growing on this parenting journey together.